Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Fantastic. I see some thumbs up. Great. How is everyone doing? I hope your day is going fantastic. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're so excited to have you here for our discussion and conversation with Sam Vaghar, MCN's Executive Director. Before we get started, please make sure that you keep your webinar or video on mute so that we don't hear a lot of background noise when we're speaking. You will have an opportunity in half an hour to ask your questions. And so as Sam speaks, if you have any questions, write them down in the chat box and we'll be able to go through them, and we will ask you to unmute yourself and ask the question. And please introduce yourself. Write down your name and country and campus and where you're coming from. Would love to meet you. I've already seen many introductions, people from all around the world. Thank you all for joining us today. And let's get started. So today we're gonna have a conversation with Sam Vaghar. Sam is the Executive Director for the Millennium Campus Network. He's a social entrepreneur committed to helping people with their own voice and power for social impact. With over a decade of impact, co-founding and leading the Millennium Campus Network, Sam has built a student movement for the UN Sustainable Development Goals in 16 nations. He is a 2008 graduate of Brandeis University, and he received an honorary doctorate from Vaghar College in 2018. Sam has given talks at over 100 institutions worldwide, including Harvard University, MIT, and the White House, the United Nations, the Vatican, and many others. In addition, Sam serves on multiple boards, including as an advisor to the Executive Director of UN Women. So without further ado, welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Noha. And you all should know this, but Noha and Karen do so much to make this program a success. Just two of the best leaders you'll find in this entire space. And so I just want to say thanks to you for all you do. I am so thrilled to be able to connect with all of you today and have this opportunity. And I'm hoping actually that this webinar is a little different than the others. You'll see from the schedule, we have so many different leaders who want to engage with you as Millennium Fellows. Obviously at MCN, we're thrilled to partner with the United Nations Academic Impact on the Millennium Fellowship, making this program possible. And so we'll have leaders from the UN, the Gates Foundation, Concordia, the founding prosecutor of the ICC, so many others who will be on to engage with you in dialogue over these next 2 months. But I wanted to do this in part to share insight, share anything I can to support your projects and your work, but also to learn from you how the fellowship is going. If there are certain things that you're looking for, I want your ideas. I want to take this opportunity to engage directly with you in learning those ideas. And then as I shared in the chat box, I'm on most social, just at my name, at Sam Vaghar. And I would definitely encourage you to connect with me on any social media platform that you like to keep the conversation going. So first I'll just share my story, but I'll keep that part brief. My story, and I shared it in the town hall last month, is that when I was 19 years old, I read 2 books that changed my life. One was Mountains Beyond Mountains, about a doctor named Paul Farmer, and the other was The End of Poverty by an economist, Jeffrey Sachs. So I learned that over 700 million people live in extreme poverty, but that there are also things we can do, big and small, to respond to the crisis. And so when I was 19 years old, put down the books, picked up the phone, cold called this world famous economist, Jeffrey Sachs, went down to Columbia University 2 days later, met with his team, and said, look, I'm 19, I don't have many answers, but I know our generation can. I know we can do more to tackle extreme poverty. advance the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and I want to figure out what small role we can play in advancing these goals. And came back to campus, started small-scale public health fundraisers, and and it was fantastic. And then from there, we said, you know, what can we do beyond our single campus? We had raised $5,000, but what can we do beyond that? And and we brought student leaders together from across the city of Boston in 2007. We said, look, we're all focused on injustice, but we're doing this work in silos. I was at Brandeis University. There were others at Harvard, at Northeastern, at Brown, at Bentley, at in Boston, the surrounding areas. What could we do if we teamed up? And you know, from Northeastern to BU to Brandeis to Tufts to Harvard and beyond, we said, what could we do? And 6 months later, we had our first conference at MIT. 1,000 student leaders showed up from around the world with Paul Farmer, Jeff Sachs, John Legend, the head of USAID. Paul, Jeff, and John joined our board of advisors, and they said, we're in, let's build this student network on poverty. I said, I'm 20 years old. I don't even know what this is yet, but okay, let's give it a shot. And so we launched Millennium Campus Network, MCN, in our university dorm rooms to help young leaders change the world. Our simple premise is united and supported young people change the world. We've seen it throughout history, in the civil rights movement in this country, in the movement to end apartheid in South Africa, in the movement that you're seeing today and many of you are part of for climate justice. On so many issues, young people are out in front leading that change. And what we found was that no social movement is really driven by young people alone. They're intergenerational. But they are driven in large part by the energy, the passion of young people, the courage of young people. And so we wanted to build on that. We wanted to build on that energy and optimism and really imagine what could happen if we linked up young leaders, if we gave you the requisite training, connections, credentials to have deeper impact during your time as undergraduates on university campuses around the world, and then launching into careers. And so we've helped just over 6,000 young people have deeper social impact in their communities. 75% of our alumni are now in social impact careers. And I mention that because whether you're a Millennium Fellow or you're an MCN member, you know, our hope is that you will continue on this trajectory, that your engagement with us in ways big and small prepare you for a career with social impact. And so we've had alum who've gone on to work at the United Nations, to work at NGOs, to work doing corporate social responsibility, to work in impact investing, to work in so many different ways, launching social enterprises that are having deep impact in community. To give you one example from our earliest days, Toby Norman, you can Google it, but there's an organization called Simprints. When Toby went through our programs early on in his career, he learned how to network, how to build professional networks. And so he built this organization called Simprints. The challenge he identified was that in many communities around the world, people don't have ID. And the implication of that is that if they don't have ID, aid can't reach its intended recipients. And so he created with his team at Simprints a low-cost biometric scanner, a fingerprint scanner. And this fingerprint scanner in short order has been used by over 50,000 people around the world. Organizations like BRAC, UNICEF, and others now use it. They've raised money over $5 million from USAID, the Gates Foundation, DFID, and others. And it's all, you know, he's 29. He became a Schwab Social Entrepreneur of the Year at 29 years old. And so that's really the point, is that wherever you are in the world, wherever you're tuning in from, you have power and agency to create social impact in your community. We know that. We don't have to tell you that. You're already doing the good work. And so we really want to challenge you to be at your best, to build a community of practice so you're not doing this work alone, but really doing it in solidarity with others locally and globally, so that your successes and your failures inform others' experiences, and that their experiences inform your own as well. And that's really the premise behind what we're building with MCN, and why we're so thrilled that what started with 11 Millennium Fellows in the class of 2014, this year there's 1,092 Millennium Fellows in 16 countries. And Fellows projects are projected to positively impact the lives of 1 million people this year. So we really are building a movement, a trusted source of social impact talent on university campuses with the Millennium Fellowship. And so to each of you as Millennium Fellows, thank you for your leadership and commitment. To each of you as members, thank you. Thank you for showing up and for all you do. And I'm really excited to be in conversation with you and really trying to answer any question I can about MCN, about the Millennium Fellowship, about my journey, and most importantly, to devote a bunch of time this morning to learn from you about what you really want, what's working, what's not, and how we can be most helpful. So maybe I'll pause there and would love to take any questions that any of you have or reactions, and then I'll have a couple of questions for you too. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. And if you have a question, try to click on the button where you can raise your hand and we can call you, or type it in the chat box and we can also call your name and have you ask your question. I also want to start with a question that was sent a little bit before our webinar got started. So Sam, we had a fellow that reached out and asked the following. So if you could create a plan for an SDG today, what would it be and which SDG would you start to work towards?
You know, it's a great question. And I think one of the issues that first I'd say, look, governments around the world, NGOs, businesses, so many stakeholders came together to create the Sustainable Development Goals. So I think we don't really need new goals. And there's already a great platform to build on. What we need to do is actually be accountable for the goals that have been set already. I'm 33 years old. When we started, before the Sustainable Development Goals, there were the Millennium Development Goals. And those were set in 2000 to be achieved by 2015. Some were supported and met, and some were not. And so I think each time goals are set and not met, you lose trust, you lose public trust. So I would say, rather than creating new goals, it's really important to meet the existing ones we have. And these are really goals for this generation that are set, to be achieved in the next 11 years by 2030. If I could include one other one, I think it would be, because I just listened, I was, at the UN just 2 weeks ago during the General Assembly Week in New York. And the person who really inspired me was Mo Ibrahim. And I'm sure some of you know Mo Ibrahim Foundation, his work on good governance. Part of that is actually giving a cash incentive, I think, to the tune, if I'm getting it right, of $5 million for elected leaders, heads of state who actually leave office on time and exhibit good governance. And so definitely an issue, that it seems front of mind to many is around good governance, tackling corruption. I think these are things that, yes, are embedded in the SDGs, but seem to me should have increasing focus. I'd say one other, if I could, would be around civic engagement, really around what we're all doing. I suppose it's in SDG 4 and SDG 8, as well as SDG 17 to some degree. But I do think, what you all are doing is really how goals like the SDGs are met. And And I'd love to see, obviously, more programming like ours, more funding for programming like ours, more support, infrastructure, scaffolding for leaders like you. That to me is a huge priority because that's how pretty much every social movement has been built. Um, is building out robust infrastructure and systems and support. And so that's, I don't really see that in the SDGs, to be candid. I think it's in there, but not explicitly enough. So that would be an area that I would focus on. Thanks for the question.
Awesome. And that question was from Hannah Kirby from Washburn University. So thank you for asking. We have a few questions in the chat box. So the first one is from Mohammed Tayar. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask a question? And when you do, please do introduce your name, your campus, and your country.
Hi, Mr. Sam. I am Muhammad Tayar from Yemen at Al-Raz University. My question, does MCN still support Fellows class 2018, or just when they finished, they didn't connect with you?
That's a great question. I will ask Noah to share the blog post of Chantel, who is one of the Millennium Fellows from last year. So to give you, it's a great question, and thank you for the work you're leading on, Mohammed. Really appreciate it. To give you context for how we structured this, obviously the Millennium Fellowship, we made it one semester, and that was important to us to do it August to December, because you all are on different campuses around the world with different school schedules. And so if we did it, for instance, calendar year, or if we did it from September to May, it would work for some students, not others. We want to do something time bound. We also knew that if we said, oh, you're a fellow for 3 years, energy dissipates. And so it's hard to hold somebody accountable for, attending 35 sessions or 50 sessions. It's hard. We wanted to do something that we could actually measure, where we could refine the program based on user feedback, based on what Millennium Fellows tell us is working, and what needs to change. And then we said, look, we want to do this at scale because we want the Millennium Fellowship. We want every Millennium Fellow to be known in your community. It's not going to happen overnight, but 5-10 years from now, if we do this right, people will say to you when they look on your resume, your CV, oh, you're a Millennium Fellow. Wow, how did you become a Millennium Fellow? Tell us more. That's really what we're building. And that kind of credentialing, that kind of understanding of your work. It's hard to do that at a grassroots level because there are so many leadership programs at a grassroots level that it's hard to trust them. But, to have the MCN and the United Nations Academic Impact together saying, what you're doing is important to achieving the SDGs, it really is going to elevate young leaders in ways that I think many young leaders haven't been elevated, especially on university campuses where so much change is happening. Once you graduate the Millennium Fellowship, really, what we look to do is have you come back either as mentors, so as mentors to your local Millennium Fellows, or some actually you'll see during the webinar sessions this year, come back to engage fellows around the world as alumni. We'll share with you, so Noha just shared a blog article that you can read about Chantel Marquera. Chantel, shortly after becoming a Millennium Fellow and graduating the program at Arizona State University, she's been leading on preschool access and quality in Zimbabwe, where she's from, and she was named a Rhodes Scholar. And then after that, we nominated her for a youth task force for UN Women. So she's now helping to do engagement for UN Women for their upcoming summits. And so we're continuing to engage her in that way and having her plug in with UN Women. We have other fellows that we've engaged in similar ways. And again, I don't want to overpromise because it's a small team working with 1,000 Millennium Fellows this year, 400 Millennium Fellows from last year. So there's only, so much we can realistically do. But what I'd say is, reach out to us and ask. That's the kind of idea, Mohammed, I love that you asked this question. If you said to us, look, what we really need is like a matchmaking service, like we need your help to connect with employers or to graduate schools or to funders, or I really need a letter of recommendation or a reference. Like these things would really help me, or there are other ways that you can support us. Let us know. We do have on millenniumfellows.org, you can actually go under the alumni section. You can see on the website all of the profiles of the class of 2018, their biographies, their projects, and how to connect and get in touch with them. And so you can actually go filter by SDG or by keyword and find fellows projects from last year that resonate with your own and reach out directly to them. And soon for the class of 2019, we'll have all of your profiles up. Those profiles, we want to continue to be active, not just while you're Millennium Fellows, but even 3 to 5 years from now. So that, if an employer is trying to understand who you are, you don't just need, a Facebook or a LinkedIn or something else. You'll have this platform on millenniumfellows.org where you can share your social impact journey and have a space for alumni updates as well to share on your own bio, on your profile link. Here's what I've been up to since being a Millennium Fellow. So we want to support that, and we want to support you, obviously, as best we can, not just as fellows, but as alumni as well. And thank you for that question. And I will say, if you have more ideas on that, Mohammed, of what you're hoping for, let us know. We'll be happy to be in conversation with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Our next question is from Alexa. Alexis, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question? And please do introduce yourself, name, country, and campus.
My name is Alexi Santiago-Nieves. I'm from Bentley University in Waltham, Massachusetts, near Boston in the United States. And my question is, how large do you believe the fellowship can grow to? I'm aware that our class is over 1,000 fellows, but could you see 10,000 in the near future? And do you think there are certain advantages and disadvantages to growth?
Yeah, Alexis, this is a great question, and you're basically from my hometown, so it's really wonderful to connect with you. And I think to this question, like I mentioned earlier, we started with 11 Millennium Fellows in the first class. It was 11 young leaders actually in Boston. We really had to work hard to recruit those 11. Because when you don't have a program and no one's ever heard of it, and you say, we're launching the Millennium Fellowship, people said, well, what is this? There wasn't a track record to go on. Last year, we partnered with the United Nations Academic Impact, and that partnership has absolutely elevated the brand, the network, the reach, the impact. We had over 7,000 applicants. Over 7,000 applicants from over 1,200 campuses in 135 countries for the Millennium Fellowship this year. We picked the top 6% of campus cohorts worldwide for the Millennium Fellowship this year, which is how we got 1,092 Millennium Fellows. Some of the people on this webinar, I know there's over 100 people on today, and some of you I know are MCN members, not Millennium Fellows. Maybe wish you were, and to be honest, I wish that you could be. The reality is, one is this is a cohort-based model, and so we're not just looking to support individuals, but really build communities of practice where you all are learning together from each other's experience and respective projects at a grassroots level. And two is that we just don't have the capacity. There was definitely enough quality where if we had a larger team, we could be working with thousands of young leaders a year. So to answer your question directly, Alexis, yes, our hope is that we can scale this incrementally year over year. We already scaled from 402 fellows last year to 1,092 fellows in the class of 2019. Next year is the 75th anniversary of the UN. It's 2020. So I'd love to see if we could potentially, based on quality and capacity, actually double it again to about 2,000 Millennium Fellows in 2020, and then continue to scale incrementally to basically an annual class size of 5,000 Millennium Fellows worldwide each year going through this program. We've studied it, and we've seen that when you hit a number like 5,000, you can actually build a brand at scale that's known. To give you comparable examples in an American context, the Peace Corps has about 7,300 members each cycle, each class. And a program known here in the US, Teach for America. Teach for America has about 5,000 core members each class. So you don't need 50,000 or 100,000 young people engaging in something to build a brand. We've actually seen that done effectively with about 5,000 people in a class. And so that's really our goal, is to get to 5,000 by incrementally growing year over year. You, Alexis, and each of you can help us do that. If you're still going to be undergrads next year, apply or reapply for the Millennium Fellowship, and Noha can share the link to apply. It's already live for the class of 2020 on millenniumfellows.org. So we'd encourage you to invite others on your campus to build a cohort for 2020. The application is open now, rolling admissions through spring, through April 2020. And then, just help us spread the word. If there are networks, where we can get the word out, we'd love that. And then ultimately, what I spend about 80% of my time doing is thinking about how to get this funded, right? How do we ensure that we have the philanthropic capital, that philanthropy is supporting us to ensure we can carry this out at scale? Because to your point, Alexis, a disadvantage of scale is both quality control. When you're working with thousands of people a year, it's oversight becomes increasingly important, but it's difficult, frankly, at scale. That's just a reality of scaling nearly anything. And two is, that we create really tight feedback loops. And that's part of why we're doing this webinar this morning, is I really wanted to engage with all of you and be connected. Because what happens is a lot of programs, especially for young people, they scale too fast. They'll say, we have 10,000, 50,000, 150,000 members, but they don't actually know any of them. They know maybe 1% of their members, and the rest maybe are in name only. But those members ask for support and they get nothing back because the staff isn't really set up to support it. So we only want to scale as much as we can actually manage from an internal capacity standpoint. We've found, at least for us, and others, may have a different opinion, but if we have one staff member for each 30 campuses, more or less, 30 to 35 campuses, if we have one staff member for each 30 to 35 campuses, we can actually build a robust feedback loop with those campuses, with campus directors, and ensure that people have their needs met, and ensure that campus directors are getting the support they need to then implement the Millennium Fellowship with student leaders. You've seen other networks where it's one staff organization for, let's say, 100 or 200 or 300 campuses. And I think it's just, I don't think it's effective. I think it looks big on paper, but I think it's actually not. It's doing a disservice to young people because you're not really getting the mentorship, the support that you need. And so that's what I found, just from doing this work for over a decade, what I've seen work and why we're taking this approach. Thanks for the question, Alexis.
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much. The next question we have is from Esther Adebayo. Would you like to ask the question? So I'll say it really quickly. So Esther is asking, how do we measure our impact of people in our community, especially for those working on SDG 6, which is clean water and sanitation. So around impact and measurement, how do we do it?
Yeah, this is a great question. And this is, Esther, thank you for asking this question. I want to say two quick things about impact. One is in terms of just measurement and around SDG 6 in particular, I would really look at organizations that have found ways to do this effectively. One, regardless of kind of digging into the weeds on a particular program, I would take a look, and I'm putting in the chat box, at Charity Water. I just look at kind of how they talk about their impact in community around the world. Their expertise more than anything has been, I think, around marketing. But they do everything from when somebody donates to Charity Water, they do GPS tracking where they can actually show you where your dollars have gone, like which well has been created thanks to your contribution. Even the status of the well, how old it is, how functional it is, how it's being used and utilized. That's just one example, but I think more to the point is, one, I'd say be conservative. You know, don't try to say, and we actually look for this in the application process. Don't try to say, oh, you know, we're positively impacting 20,000 people's lives, and then you have no way to actually measure it. In some ways, it's better to say, hey, we're positively impacting 50 people this year. Our goal is just 50 people, but we can actually measure it and show that life outcomes have improved by the metrics that we have. Maybe it's a reduction in waterborne disease in the community over a cycle or 2 cycles or 3 cycles. And it's small. We piloted it with 20 or 50 people. And then once we've done that effectively, we think about how we would scale this up in the community that we're in, or even in other communities. The other piece that I'd add, and Noha, maybe you can just pull this video. It's the first video that Rakesh Rajani has shared on YouTube. And Rakesh, I absolutely love. I'm actually going to ask him if he can do a webinar with all of you as well. Rakesh used to run his own civil society organizations in Tanzania, then was a VP at the Ford Foundation, now at Co-Impact. But he talks about creating learning organizations. And I think it's so important because what he talks about is, you know, the data is only as good as the learning that you do from it. You can collect all the data you want in terms of, okay, this number of people have access to clean, safe drinking water. You want to be tracking both inputs in terms of what you're doing, the hours you're dedicating, the dollars you're raising, the impact you're having, the inputs, the outputs in terms of, okay, you know, X amount gallons of water was produced, but then also outcomes, like I said, a reduction in waterborne disease, and then literally being able to say, and because of that, you know, X number of people are now healthier, or Y number of kids are now able to go to school and stay in school and aren't sick. Like, we can actually, these things are measurable, but it's only as good as your commitment to actually not just measuring, but refining your program based on the data that you're seeing, creating that feedback loop where you see, okay, this aspect of our program worked, so let's build on that. This aspect of the program was less effective, so let's refine that. And so Rakesh talks about creating learning organizations. I would highly encourage you to go on YouTube, watch his first talk on creating a learning organization, and commit to doing that with your fellowship projects and beyond as you build a career in this space. And then beyond that, Esther, to your point about SDG 6, if you're looking for best-in-class examples of organizations advancing that goal, number one, you can Google that. I guarantee you, like, there are lists of organizations leading on that particular SDG. If you type in SDG 6 and leading organizations to learn from, and then you can reach out directly to them and ask them how they do it and learn directly from them. That would be my advice to you. And if you're not sure how to do that, then reach out to Noha, reach out to me. We can try and connect you with a couple of those organizations. And thank you for the question.
Great, thank you for your answer, Sam. More questions are coming in. Thank you all for sending them. Really great questions. We have another one that's from Melissa. Melissa, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question? And do introduce yourself.
Lisa Fernandez. I'm from the University of the Ozarks. And the question that I have for you is about our project. We have been working hard to try to reach out the people because we are doing food insecurity on our campus. So it has been hard since, it has been a challenge since there is not a visible reward for the people. So it's hard to get them involved. What is like, since your own experience, your recommendation, so we motivate the people to come to our workshops and to join our project and our ideas?
Can I guess, and I just shared the video from Rakesh that I'd encourage you all to watch. But let me ask you as a follow-up, Melissa. I mean, what have you tried? Like, what do you think might work? And what do you think the biggest roadblocks are as to why it hasn't worked? If you just want to take 30 seconds to speak to that.
Well, we have been working on break stigmas that are around food insecurity. We are also like talking that we are not the only one with this issue, and we have been doing workshops for the community, but it has been very hard to get the people involved. So we don't really have the amount of people that we were expecting. So I guess it's a challenge for all of us, and all of us have been like through all these, but that's why I'm asking you, like, how will you get people more motivated to join us?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So one thing I do is there are 108 people on this call right now, on this webinar. So rather than just draw on my experience, I want to invite everyone worldwide. If you've built a movement on your campus, if you've solved that challenge where you have dozens or hundreds of young leaders involved in your project, I want you to write in the chat box, put your name in, put your contact information in, so that Melissa can connect with you during this and after this, and learn from your experience. That is the power of the Millennium Fellowship. It's not just asking me because I'm one person. It's the power of the collective. I mean, all of you around the world sharing your insight to help Melissa tackle food insecurity in her community. That's the power. So what I can share beyond what anyone else might be able to share is, for me, what I've seen work is, number one, be very clear about the challenge. What is the challenge that you're solving for, or what value are you looking to add in the community? Two is make it fun and engaging. That always tends to work. And I think, students, like, ironically, because you're doing food insecurity, but definitely like having food at events I've seen help. But I think actually the biggest thing, to be honest, beyond any of that, is make it personal. Make it personal. And what I mean by that is, and I see Christine like putting in a note about creative marketing with slogans that associate with your goal, maybe, and billboards. And Christine, if you want to put in your social media, or if anyone else wants to put in your ideas, but also ways for Melissa to get in touch with you, I think would be great, so that you can continue the dialogue. But the big thing when I say make it personal is, I've seen so many organizations around the world do the same tactics for marketing that were tried 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's 2019. It's time to really meet people where they are. But what I mean by that is not just, okay, now go on social media and connect with people there. What I mean is go out there and actually meet people. You'll see people tabling for different causes. Maybe you've tried this, Melissa. Others probably have as well. You sit behind a table and you wait for people to come to you. That never works. It is so rare that is how a movement builds. When I was first getting involved on campus, the best thing that I did was I would go door to door. I knocked on people's doors. And I said, hey, excuse me, I know we haven't met before, but I'd love to connect with you and learn, and I'd love to invite you to a meeting. And literally just by taking that time to actually get invested and learn about the person and what they're passionate about, and then invite them to help co-create what we're building together, they were bought in. When we first started MCN, it actually started as a student organization on our campus. It started with 2 or 3 of us, and then a couple of years in, there were 40 people at every meeting, 40 young leaders showing up at every meeting, because we did that. We went door to door, we got to meet people, got to know people. We took people out for coffee, we took people out, sat down one-on-one, and we just got to know them and their story. And we said, who are you? What do you care about? Why do you care about making a difference? And then we identified, here are the specific roles and responsibilities, not just volunteers. You could have 100 volunteers, but you know what? Your organization could actually accomplish more sometimes with 5 or 6 well-defined roles, where your organization is very small, but you know exactly what people are responsible for. And you say, look, if you follow through on these things, then we will ultimately hit our goals for the semester or for the year. This is a much stronger case, not only for the community, but also for your own resume, for your CV. Because then, you know what, you can say, hey, I headed up communications for this particular project. We raised 15,000 or 5,000 or whatever the amount was. We ensured that X amount of people had access to food, that we tackled food insecurity in very measurable ways. And my specific role helped us meet that goal. That is a much more powerful narrative. It's much deeper impact than just saying, okay, we need more people to get engaged. Be thinking about what those ultimate goals are that are measurable, that are time bound over the course of a semester or a year, that specific people can help fill. And then go find those people by meeting them one-on-one. Don't wait for them to come to you. Go try and find them, seek them out, understand them, and invite them into the movement. Thanks, Melissa. And I see a lot of great insights here in the chat box as well. And I'm hoping some of you can follow up directly with Melissa by sharing your contact information. This is great.
Excellent, thank you. And yes, thank you all for sharing your thoughts and feedback based on your experiences. Sam, you mentioned, and you talked a little bit about networking in the beginning. Tabitha from ALU had a question to follow up on that. So would you like to unmute yourself? Tabitha, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hello.
Hi. So please
Hi.
introduce yourself and share your question with Sam.
Okay. Yeah, hello. I'm Tabitha from the African Leadership University. So Sam, my question to you is that with regards to networking, how do I network with people in a professional way? So you meet people, you realize you share the same ideas and visions with them. So how do you talk to them to bring them on board in terms of when you're facing challenges, they can get ideas from their experiences and incorporate in whatever you're doing? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I love it. I love that. So thank you for this question. It's one of my favorites. I'm actually very quietly writing a book on this subject. And my goal is to publish it in 2021. And hopefully you all, know how to share the link to my bio. But I give talks around the world to young leaders, universities. So you can invite me to your university or others, because this is actually a subject that I'm really passionate about. Is, how do you fully leverage your time as a student in building your professional network, both during your time on campus, but also beyond what's in the classroom and even beyond your fellowship projects. You have access to your peers, your professors, your university administration, your alumni, your local community, your global community. There's so much power at your fingertips. Like, there's so much power right around each of us. And so how do you fully leverage that? One, I think it's really good to have something to be asking for. And advantage for all of you is you have projects, you have things you're working on, so you have something to ground the ask in. The second thing is a key question that Ron Cordes of the Cordes Foundation taught me to always ask in any meeting is it's 5 magic words. It's 5 magic words to ask anyone that you meet with along the journey is how can I help you? How can I help you? So rather than saying to people, you know, I need XYZ, I need funding, I need an internship, I need a job, I need your help. Also realize that each of you have immense power and talent and agency and a lot to contribute. Sometimes people, look, the reality is sometimes you may not have much to offer someone, but sometimes you might. So many companies are constantly looking to market to young people, looking to learn from young people. And so that's the opportunity that that you have. Just by asking the question, you actually show that you value the other person. You value their contributions, what they bring to the table, and you value their needs and their priorities as well. So always ask, how can I help you? One thing that I've learned doing this work 12 years, you can reach out to almost anyone. You know, you'll look at a company or a nonprofit or a government agency and you might say, well, they're huge, like they're the United Nations. Well, I first started going to the UN when I was 19 years old. Of course, not everyone can go to the UN in New York. That's not the point. But the UN has offices all around the world. So, you know, instead of looking at the UN or the Gates Foundation or others as these big monolithic institutions that you can't reach out to that are too big, just realize that no institution is more or less than the sum of people. And so what I've typically done is I cold email people all the time. I reach out to the person at the very top. I figure out their email because most, I don't want to say too much on this publicly, but I can tell you privately, most companies have the same email pattern. I mean, I'll put my email in the chat box, but as you can see, like it's pretty obvious how we make our email structure at MCN. So pretty much everyone else's email follows that same pattern. So, you know, first initial, first name, last name is pretty simple. And so once you figured out somebody's email, sending an email that's authentic, that's flattering, that honors the work that the person is already doing and why you want to connect on it. Keep your stuff short and sweet. In 2019, no one has time for a long email. Sometimes I get these like monologues, these mini books that are basically trying to explain the project. No one, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but no one cares because they don't have time. They just don't have the time or want to make the time. On the other hand, short email to the point, and then say, you know, I'd love to follow up and have the opportunity to learn from your example, to learn from your advice and counsel, to share what I'm doing and get your advice. People love giving advice. I love giving advice. You can reach out to me for advice and I'll try and find time to do that. And then once you're asking for advice and you've built that connection, from there, you can start to pivot and say, well, what can we actually accomplish together? Or, you know, what we really do need is $500 or $1,000 or access to a listserv or whatever it might be to help elevate your project. I think it's such an important topic, and there's so much more that I want to say on it. But I think the biggest thing that I could say is, again, it's the best advice I ever got was never be afraid to talk to anyone. Of course, there are times where you should be a little bit nervous or tread carefully. But in general, operate with that mentality that anybody, whether it's your university president, vice chancellor, whoever it might be, they're there to support you. That's ultimately why they're in that role. And you know, you're doing work on behalf of a cause bigger than yourself. And so, you know, I would say have that courage in the project, in the work that you're doing, and know that part of this journey is about rejection. I think the people at the highest levels of this space, they've been rejected a lot. It's just part of the work. And it's, believe me, it's painful. I hate it too. It's not great to be rejected, but every once in a while you get a yes. That's, you know, what happened with United Nations Academic Impact, and here we are speaking to all of you around the world. So that's really the power of making the most of your opportunities, having a clear ask, and then following up with people who express interest. And I'm happy to, I mean, you can ping me. I'm happy to talk to you more, obviously one-on-one about that subject, and I'm really grateful for the question. So thank you. I want to be mindful of time because I know we just got a couple minutes left. I guess one thing I wanted to do, and you can maybe just write in the chat box, or you can pose, or you can ask Ping Noha if you want to, if you want to speak up. I'd love to just get input maybe from a couple of you on how the Millennium Fellowship is going for you, and if there's any particular things that that you're really looking for that you're not getting already from us. Of course, I'm sure some of you would say, well, we need funding for our projects, give us funding. Or I really need an internship or a job, get me a job. Well, the point of the Millennium Fellowship, you know, we're one organization, right? We can't get every young person a job or funding. The point is really to build your own power so that you can secure career pathways and funding for yourself, for your own projects. We want to build your power to be able to do that. And training, connections, and credentials is really what we can offer at scale to thousands of young leaders a year to help you build this movement and your own project and social impact career. But are there those things or other things that are front of mind where you say, look, we haven't had a fellowship session on a particular topic, or there's something else that I'd really benefit from? I'd love to hear that directly from you while I've got a couple minutes with you.
Excellent. So as you all share your feedback, and please use the chat box to write your feedback, a lot of questions came, and I want this to be the last question to share your last thoughts, is as Millennium Fellows graduate and go into their career, how can they continue making social impact? For some of them, they might want to take the projects that they're doing right now and grow it to be something so much bigger than what it is right now on the campus, just like what it happened with MCN. And for others, they might want to explore doing social impact through their career. So from your experience for over a decade, how can they continue to make this possible in their communities and still impact positive lives?
So I want to make sure I got that right. The question is really about how to build a career in this space long term. Yeah. So I think a couple things. You know, a decade in, your life and priorities may shift. I've seen it happen all too often where as an undergrad, you're passionate about making a difference. 15, 20 years later, you're very passionate about making money and maybe less passionate about making a difference. It happens in many different contexts and geographies for a whole host of reasons. My only advice would be to think about the kind of life you want to have. Define it as best you can. Write it down. You know, these are the kinds of things that'll make me feel fulfilled. I've done this for myself where I've literally written down in detail, these are the kinds of things that make me fulfilled, both personally and professionally. What would it take to get there? It's different in different contexts. We're not, I mean, you all are in different places and time zones all over the world with different access to resources and opportunities. And so what I'd say is really think about, in your own context, in your own lived experience, what are you hoping for? What are you aspiring for? I know for me, I have very clear objectives about where I want to be, you know, 15, 20 years from now, and then work backwards, reverse engineer from there. If this is where I want to be 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now, a year from now, what should I be doing in the next 6 months, in the next quarter, in the next 1 month, in the next week, today? What should I be doing to get to where I want to go? Having said that, live in the present as well, because life will take twists and turns that you can't anticipate, and that's important to be open to as well. But have your North Star. For me, my North Star, what drives me, is a belief in helping young people own their voice and power to make a difference. That is my North Star. That is what I care most about. And so whatever I'm doing professionally, whether it's helping lead MCN and supporting Millennium Fellows around the world, or whether it's engaging on youth engagement with UN Women and advising with UN Women, or whether it's a couple of other projects, the book I'm writing, other things I'm working on, it all leads back to helping young people own their voice and their power to make a difference. So to that question, I'd ask each of you, what is your North Star? What is your North Star for social impact? What is your North Star for your life? Maybe it's more than one. You know, maybe it's about raising a family. Maybe it's about building a community. Maybe it's about the friendships that you cultivate. Whatever your North Star or North Stars are, make sure that your life, as one mentor once told me, to live a life in congruence with your values, to ensure that the way you're showing up personally and professionally with the people right around you, with your family members and others, make sure you're really leading a life in congruence with your values. That I think is the most important thing, both for building a career in this space and just for, you know, the kind of legacy and impact that you want to have over the time that you're here. I hope that you all will be part of our 75% or more of our alumni who build careers with social impact. Whether you're in the public sector or the private sector, in government and NGOs and business, that you're committed to building a career with social impact, because we need you. The world desperately needs you. It needs all of us to make those commitments. And we're here to support you however long we can, however we can, in ways big and small towards that goal. So, you know, count on us. I'm counting on all of you. We're counting on you as Millennium Fellows and as MCN members to lead in driving change in your communities and beyond. And we're so thrilled to be in community with you. And yeah, really, really honored to be with you today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam, for all your insights and thoughts that you shared with the fellows and MCN members today. And I want to be mindful of everyone's time. It's 11 a.m. Eastern time here. So thank you all for joining and engaging for this hour. I know there are a lot of questions that we might have not gotten answered. So please reach out to either me or Team MCN. Both of the emails are now in the chat box. We're happy, or Sam directly, of course, and we're happy to follow up with any questions that you wanted to get answered. And with that, we'll keep the chat open for the next few minutes. So if you do have any final thoughts you want to share with the team, or with your fellows or with Sam, we're here for the next 2-3 minutes. But thank you.
With content for the class of 2020. So if you're looking to be a Millennium Fellow next year, this link that I just put in the chat box has access to draft email, social media content, and we'd love for you to help. We already have you know, well over 1,000 applications for the class of 2020 and growing quickly. But we'd love your help to share the Millennium Fellowship class of 2020 application with young leaders on your campus, with friends around the world, building cohorts for next year. And I'm also going to put, again, my email in the chat box, and I'm on most social at Sam Vaghar. So would love to keep in touch. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.